we have done a lot of reading during our university life about him.
Yeah, that's right.
Noam Chomsky, Gramsci.
He's kind of a legend, is he? Yeah, everyone's heard of him. Yeah, I mean, I've got to admit, when I first came across myradio and got involved in this show and so on, I was amazed about it. I think the sheer amount of people who are logging on and checking it out and listening to the different kinds of shows, actually. And in terms of what it's doing and its potential, it's got a very important niche in terms of the way people are gaining news and having discussion. And obviously the internet. Am I right in saying that for a lot of young people nowadays, the internet has taken over from television and normal radio? Would you agree with that?
In my opinion, yes. I think most of the Hong Kong teenagers get their news sources from the internet. But then if you say we don't depend on or we don't rely on television news or radio news, I don't think it's possible. As I've interviewed you last December.
You did, yeah.
You actually raised up a really good point, because the news sources that we watch on the internet is basically recorded or being referred through the mainstream media. Actually, we are watching YouTube, but then mainly it's a recorded version of TVB or ATV News or something like that. So basically, we're still getting our information from the mainstream media sources, but then we are through a different channel, and we are allowed to express our opinions and comment on them. I think that's the main difference.
In terms of influence and credibility, do you think people reading the newspaper, though, in some ways are more influenced? They kind of believe what is written a bit more than if they read it on a forum or a discussion. And how is it, is that changing, and how can that change if you see what I mean?
I think the situation now for the internet, it's the legitimacy of the information and the opinions on the internet. Basically, people who are expressing their opinions on the internet, it's actually anonymous. People don't know who you are, so you can actually say whatever you want without bearing the responsibility. I think that's the main difference with the newspaper. Because the newspaper is publishing officially, it's being sold for money, and people who are expressing opinions on the newspaper are basically professionals. They are doctors, or they are different kinds of lawyers. So it gives the legitimacy to them to make people believe in what they say. And
on the other hand, you see, though, in some ways you can get the truth a bit more from the internet in some ways, because obviously journalists and so on, they have to be quite careful about what they can write.
Yes.
They can't really write exactly what's happening because they're afraid of being sued or whatever. So sometimes, but on the internet, in some ways, the discussion is more open. And you can get a feel sometimes of what's really happening in some ways.
Yeah.
We're going to talk a bit more in part 2 about this, and we've got a couple of other topics as well.
相信熟悉香港人網嘅朋友咧，都唔會對黃毓民感到陌生喎。但係如果喺一個飲食節目入面見到佢咧，咁就可能少啲。今日咧，我哋就嚟到毓民私房牛肉麵呢度喎。台灣特色美食都有好多滷肉飯啊嗰啲咁樣咧，點解又會揀咗牛肉麵咧做呢度嘅主打招牌菜咧？香港人都中意食牛肉麵㗎嘛，係咪先？咁台灣佢每年都有個牛肉麵節嘅，台灣啲牛肉麵咧貴到好得人驚㗎，成千幾2000蚊台幣一碗都有啊，即係講緊你幾百蚊港紙嘅。咁啊，但係香港就即係真係有水平嘅台灣牛肉麵就真係唔多。咁佢多數都係紅燒牛肉麵，有辣有唔辣嘅。咁我哋嘅牛肉麵咧就唔係地道台灣牛肉麵嘅，我哋即係自己屋企食嘅牛肉麵，咁啊整好出嚟攞出嚟賣。不如 如介紹下呢度最出名嘅幾道招牌菜啊？
牛肉麵咧，其實一日賣幾百碗嘅呢個，就頭先講過啦，就我哋都係即係比較清湯嘅啊，咁就唔係話你出邊食啲牛肉麵好多油嗰啲睇到。係啊，冇油㗎喎。咁另外我哋仲有幾個小食亦都多人幫襯嘅，呢個蛋餅咧呢個蛋餅喺呢度好出名嘅。咁呢個鹽酥雞台灣都有嘅，不過我哋就冇貴嘅。呢個係黑油雞翼，其實即係豉油雞翼嚟嘅，咁不過就類似瑞士雞翼，但係冇咁甜，咁又好食嘅。呢個咧就係呢個肉青啦，酸辣肉青啦，又係好好賣嘅，幾個好特色嘅小食。但係個牛肉麵始終都係主打啦。
Okay, welcome back, everyone. So, Kenneth, we want to ask you a bit more about your research and so on.
Sure.
So, what would you say in terms of what myradio is doing? How can perhaps myradio, what can it do to sort of build up what it's doing more? Do you think any sort of topics or hints that you could do to try and sort of broaden the audience, perhaps? Because in some ways it's a bit of a niche audience, isn't it? It's I wouldn't say it's the geeks who are listening, but obviously it's people who know how to use a computer can listen to it. There is a huge audience out there. How does myradio get to them and bring them in, if you like?
Well, it's actually not the problem of myradio itself, but I think it's the accessibility of the internet itself. Basically, it's internet now. You still have to use mainly using a wire through your home, or if you want to get a wireless internet connection, you need to get near a building or something like that. I think that actually creates the barrier to people to access to internet sources of news or any kind of things like internet radio. And with the development of technology, I think it will more or less change or help the development of internet radio, or maybe even internet television channel in the future, because it's all about accessibility, isn't it? For the television channel, for the radio station channel, because of the low cost of reaching them, like if you get a television for like a few $1,000s, you can already watch it 24 hours a day. But then for a computer nowadays, you need to buy a computer, then you need to get registered for those kind of connections and all those kind of limitations that internet can't really compete with the television channel now or radio broadcast right now. But once that kind of connection it's developed, I think more or less it will increase the influence of the internet.
I agree with that. I think you're right. It's just a matter of time, I think. Another question, as regards Hong Kong young people, how do you get how do you say we can get the non-political young people a bit more interested in more political radio shows and so on? Because there's a lot of young people who obviously they surf the internet, they look at sites like YouTube and stuff. Perhaps they're aware of myradio, but how do you sort of get those non-political people, getting them to realise, well, actually politics is important to them, and if you start taking an interest, you'll realise why it affects your life?
Right. I think how to attract teenagers to discuss or participate in political issues, it's not the program itself, but then it's about education. It's more about the mass media, how mass media portray the political issues. Like now, I think the LSD is actually doing a good thing, that they are actually creating a kind of idol figure that make people pay attention to political issues. Maybe it's not in a positive way or a negative way, but then people will just look at it in their way and pay attention to it. And more or less, I think it will create the kind of interest that they will listen or they will pay attention, no matter it's in a political sense or entertainment kind of sense. More or less, it will change their feelings to political issues.